I was barely through the doors before I really knew that kind of smile, that marble chill, the way eyes slide off you like you're staying they can't scrub out. The bank looked like a shrine to money-pristine floors, muted voices, everyone's welcome, carved right into the wall, but I'd seen enough to know which folks actually belonged and which ones, like me, got sized up the minute they crossed the threshold. And on that particular morning, I was about to get a masterclass in policy or, the polite way prejudice puts on a tie. I came prepared, though. You learn to, in my line of work. Dark green suit, nothing flashy, hair done up in a no-nonsense bun, portfolio tucked under my arm, everything straight-laced, respectful, calm. The line inched forward, the sound of my heels clipped and neat, and every time I caught the teller's eyes, Janice, I'd find out later, I felt that pinprick of, you're not supposed to be here. She looked me up and down, lips pressed tight, and I could already tell, someone like me had to pass a different test. When it was finally my turn, she greeted me with this smile you see in car commercials. All teeth, no warmth. Good morning. I slid my folio across and explained, I have an appointment, paperwork's pre-approved, just need to sign and hand over the originals. I saw her eyes dance over the documents, not reading them, just looking for the flaw she wanted to find. Corporate paperwork, she snorted, flipping pages like discount flyers. That's cute. You sure you know what you're handing over? She leaned into it mocking, loud enough for the line behind me to hear, then she really let me have it, dropping as someone like you, with the same tone you'd used to talk about a bad rash. I kept it together barely. I'm sure you verify every corporate account holder's paperwork this thoroughly. I told her, voice steady even as my hands clenched. She tapped at the keyboard like she was sending telegrams, sighed theatrically, called the next customer up even as she told me she'd let me know if there's an issue. It was humiliating. The man behind me shuffled up, giving me a look that said, better you than me, and I was left standing there, forced to wait for her approval of paperwork that had already been greenlit by their own advisor. When Janice finally turned back, she didn't bother hiding her annoyance. I'd like you to process my paperwork now, I said, lower, firmer, willing myself not to shake. She rolled her eyes and spat. Do you even know what a corporate account is? Heads turned, conversations died. People love a scene as long as it isn't theirs. I told her exactly why I was there, who had sent me, what documents I had. She smirked, snatched my folio, spread everything out on the counter like she was checking for fakes. Tapped her nails on the seal, sniffed, anyone can print this stuff, Her contempt was a physical thing, thick in the air, and when I asked, are you going to process them or not, she picked up the phone and made a show of calling someone, name time, her voice raised so everyone could hear. Got someone here who claims she owns a business. Looks sketchy. She laughed, loud and sharp, and when she finally hung up, she gave me that same smile, fake sweet and stinging. By then, the lobby had gone silent, and that's when Gerald, the manager, made his entrance, his face set in what he probably thought was grave concern. Janice flagged him down, whispered just loud enough for me to hear, that's her, the one with the corporate papers. Gerald didn't greet me or introduce himself. He just loomed, said there'd been some confusion, and when I told him I had an appointment, he barely listened. Instead, he said, let's not raise our voices. This is a professional environment. I wasn't raising my voice. I was explaining why I was still sitting there, why nothing was being processed. He dismissed me, said maybe this branch wasn't the right fit, suggested a community branch more appropriate that could explain things in simpler terms. I almost laughed at the audacity. I told him I wasn't going anywhere. I have an appointment. I have the documents. I'm not leaving without this account being opened. He tried again to get rid of me, warned that staff wouldn't drop everything for someone who hadn't planned ahead. He called me disruptive, accused me of laundering drug money out loud, and even look at Janice as he did it. The crowd was no longer pretending not to watch. I stood, every muscle tight with anger, and told him straight, you're going to call me disruptive after what your staff just said? He threatened to call security. I told him to go ahead. I wasn't backing down. He called for security, the word disruptive echoing in the marble hush. I stood my ground, told him I'll wait. He tried to insist, but I wouldn't budge. Finally, he demanded my appointment confirmation. I handed it over email from their own advisor, Barker. He barely glanced at it, turned to Janice, had her check the system. Of course, she couldn't find it. I told him to call Barker. He laughed, accused me of wasting his time, said, "Your appointment isn't in the system. That's all that matters." I said, "You deleted it." He told me to leave. I set my folio on the counter, sliding it toward Janice. She opened it with 2 fingers like it was filthy, and then the cherry on top, she took out this huge red stamp and slammed it on every page. Declined. Over and over, loud enough for everyone to hear. She shoved it back at me, smiled. Good luck with whatever this was supposed to be. I stood there, breath shaking, refusing to cry. I gathered my things, straightened my back, and walked out. But as the doors closed, something inside me snapped back together, sharper than before. I turned, walked right back in, head high, face set. The room froze. Gerald tried to speak, but I cut him off with a raised hand. Me turn now. "Thank you," I said, my voice cold and clear. "Thank you for clarifying exactly how you treat your valued clients." The words hung in the air like ice. I told them, "I'll be sure to let my CFO know what kind of institution this is." Janice's smile finally slipped. Gerald looked worried, but it was too late. I took out my phone, called my CFO. "Pull the funds. All of it. Transfer every cent from Pinehurst Financial to First American by close of business." The panic was instant. Janice scrambled at her computer, then froze-her warning flashing on her screen. "Priority transfer, $2.9 billion, processing." Gerald paled, tried to override it, couldn't. Sandra whimpered. The phone rang, regional director on the line, furious, and Gerald could only mumble apologies. Janice was shaking, Sandra in shock. Executives rushed in, fired Janice on the spot, escorted her out, and Gerald was dragged to his office for a public dressing down. The apology to customers was loud, awkward, and hollow. Months later, the bank was never the same. New policies, bias trainings, PR campaigns, but the shame lingered in every face, in every cautious smile. Janice ended up teaching credit basics to kids in a church basement, admitting she'd once thought people like them didn't belong. Gerald, stuck in diversity seminars, finally admitted aloud what he'd done, breaking down in front of a room that listened because they'd all seen it or done it or lived it from the other side. And me? I went on with my life. Built my business, hired folks who looked like me and folks who didn't, made sure no one in my company ever felt out of place. I never went back to that branch. Didn't need to. They remembered me. Maybe now, they'd never treat anyone else like that again. So, tell me, what'd you have done if you saw this go down? Do you think justice was served? Or does it still leave you with questions? Drop your thoughts below. Like and subscribe if you want more stories that hit where it hurts. Let's talk about what fairness should really look like.